Good morning, church. That was good. It is a privilege to be here with y'all this morning, to be with people I know, people I love, and, our world is full of turmoil, right? And yet we are free to come to church, to worship without fear, and I'm just grateful to be here with you. And it's also great that, technology has allowed us to share the gospel with people around the world. So welcome to all the folks who are watching on Facebook, wherever you might be. You're a part of our church too, so thank you for joining us. So, it's August, and we got about 1 month of summer left, right? Yeah? So how many of you have gone on a trip sometime this summer? On a trip, whether it's like a weekend or a couple weeks or something, a few of you, all right. When I was younger, I would go to visit my grandparents in Texas almost every summer, right? I would see them about twice a year, usually Christmas and summer, and sometimes we would fly, sometimes we would drive. Either way, it's about 1,000 miles, give or take, between here and Midland, Texas. Now, I remember one sermon that Dennis gave a few years back in which he described how much he enjoys sitting in airports and feeling the sense of anticipation. You have hundreds of people who are going to different destinations, and it's this palpable sense of energy. Where are they going, right? So flying is fun. I always enjoyed flying to Texas, but driving to Texas and back was a lot of fun. Of course, when I was a kid, I didn't have to do the monotonous driving. That's awful, driving for 1,000 miles through the desert. Because I got to sit in back, I got to read, or just stare out the window. But what was fun about the driving was all the stops along the way, right? When we drove, we always took the 10 freeway east, right? And I guess because my little world was very small, by the time we got to Yucaipa, I thought we'd reached the end of the world. Yeah. Of course, it's still about 1,000 miles from there to Grandma's house, but so we keep driving. We would hit Blythe, and then we'd cross the border into Arizona. We would hit Phoenix, of course, pretty large city, Phoenix. A little bit out of Phoenix, we would stop at a place called Picacho Peak. We would always get gas there. And trivia for all y'all to, in case you ever get on Jeopardy or something, this place right here, this is where the furthest west battle of the Civil War was fought. Arizona, who knew, right? You can win a couple of bets on that probably. So we would keep going past Picacho Peak. We would hit Tucson at some point. We're driving all the way through the desert, not a whole lot to see. But at one point, as you get outside of Tucson, you start to see billboards that look like this. Yeah, okay, somebody's with me. All right. And there are billboards like this about every 2 miles, okay, for about 200 miles. You see one about every 2 miles. And it's really interesting because it builds up anticipation. The Thing. What is it? The Thing. Mysteries of the past. The Thing. Don't miss it. Right? And so you see these every 2 miles. It builds up the anticipation. Oh, my word, I've got to see what the thing is. Yeah? So when you get to this roadside attraction, you pull off the freeway, right? And there's a gas station there, so you can buy gas. They, about the early 90s, they put in a Dairy Queen, so you can buy yourself a milkshake or burger or something. But then when you go inside the building, it's just this corrugated metal building. It's not a big deal. When you go inside, you pay $1. $1. So it's not a ripoff. It's pretty cool. So you pay $1, you go inside, and you see all kinds of really cheese ball exhibits. I don't know how else to say it. Weapons that may or may not have been owned by someone famous, a car that allegedly belonged to Adolf Hitler, stuff you probably would have seen in a P.T. Barnum show 100 years ago, just bizarre, weird little things. And then as you wind your way through these metal buildings, then you get to the Thing. Okay, cool. Now, I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm not going to tell you what the thing is, because if you... Okay, there's this thing called Google. Use it. All right. So, but seriously, okay, so I've seen the thing, I don't know, a dozen times in my life. I don't know. But every single time I would go, even though I knew what was coming, I always felt a sense of anticipation. My heart would start to pound, right? But again, look up, and it's enclosed in this glass case. I would peer over and look at the thing. It's pretty cool. It's really neat. It's just something that you have to do, right? So then you get back in your car, you still keep heading out east on the 10 until you hit New Mexico. You drive through the flatland that the 10 goes through until you get to a city called Las Cruces, right? And just before you get to Las Cruces, there's this little town on the western side of it called La Mesilla, right? Now, La Mesilla, it's a historic town, very, very small. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. A lot of famous people have hung out here. It was built in the 1850s, just after the Mexican-American War. Billy the Kid was imprisoned here for 5 minutes or something. Pancho Villa, during the Mexican Revolution, he hung out here. It's a pretty interesting little place. And the town square, it's set out exactly like it was 150 years ago. Really cool little town. And then you head further east until you hit Deming. Right? Now, Deming is just a little one-horse town. There is nothing there except, just outside of town, you can buy the best pinto beans on the planet. Buy a 25-pound bag that'll last you a couple years. It'll be all the best pinto beans around. Awesome, great. So you buy your bag of pinto beans. They have chilies, but apparently the people from Hatch, they say they're inferior, whatever. You keep heading down the 10, right? And then you hit El Paso, right? Now, it's interesting, as you're going on the 10, you have the United States and El Paso on the left, you have Ciudad Juarez on the south, and it's a night and day difference. It's amazing to see this, right? And you keep heading out on the 10, about 300 miles past there, you get off the 10 freeway, you take a couple of different roads until you hit Midland. Now, Midland is where my grandma and grandpa lived, right? Then you go a little bit past, then you go past Midland, about, 5-10 miles, and then you get to Grandma's house, right? Then you get to Grandma's house. Now, it's interesting. We would go there, again, we would drive about once a year. My grandma's dog, Major, he hadn't seen us for 12 months. He recognized our car. He barked at every single car that drove in front of Grandma's house, except for ours. So Major would run out. He would greet us at the car, right? And, of course, we get out, and we've been cooped up in a car for the previous 2 days. Stretching, we pet Major, he's deliriously happy because nobody plays with him. And then we go inside and see Grandma and Grandpa. We have reached our destination. Yeah? Almost every summer we would do that. And we all like getting to our destination, don't we? Yeah? That's the point of traveling. You get from point A to point B, right? Yeah? So the purpose of these summer trips for me was obviously to visit my grandparents. I didn't see them that often. But as I think back on it, a big part of the fun was the journey. The journey, right? Getting to Texas, discovering all kinds of neat places along the way. We went to Carlsbad Caverns one time. We stopped by the OK Corral in Tombstone. That's pretty cool, yeah. Right? We went to the Pima Air Museum. One time we got off the beaten track and we found this cute little town up in the mountains in New Mexico called Silver City. The fun was okay. The fun was the journey, right? The journey itself and the anticipation of what was to come at the end of the trip was what made going to Grandma's house enjoyable. Yeah? We're all interested journeys, right? And this goes beyond our own travels, our own trips, wherever they might be. This week, I looked up a list of movies, because I like movies a lot. I found a list of over 100 movies with the word journey in the title, okay? Now, the first Hobbit movie, what was the subtitle? An Unexpected Journey, all right? We all like this band called... Come on, everybody, come on, you gotta do it. A singer in a smoky room. The smell of wine and cheap perfume. Don't stop. Come on. That was pretty good. I love you guys. Okay, all right, that's enough. That's okay, all right. We like Journey, yeah? There's just something. There's something about trips, voyages, expeditions, treks, traveling that excites us. It gets us out of our chairs. It prompts us to dream of exotic locations, how to get there. So these days, I've noticed, and I didn't know this or notice this when I was younger, but these days it's become popular to refer to your spiritual walk as a journey. And for a long time, I guess I thought that I don't know, I don't like that word. I resisted using the term journey in terms of our spiritual walk. I guess I thought it was somehow not appropriate. And I guess I had the idea that it's the destination that's important, right? And so if you say, well, I'm on my journey, it somehow implies that you haven't arrived at that destination. See, in my mind, you're supposed to be converted, right? You're supposed to be one with God. You're supposed to be a church member. You're supposed to have your act together, right? And so when you do that, you have arrived at your destination. So I guess I thought when a person referred to their faith walk as a journey, I thought of it as a cop-out, right? I thought of it as a cop-out, that what this person was really saying was that, well, I just haven't quite pulled the trigger on the whole faith thing, and they just don't want to commit, right? But I'm on my journey, I'm on my way, so cut me some slack, man, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that that journey is a great, wonderful metaphor for faith. And so Terry talked last week about salt and light as metaphors for faith, right? Those of you who were here, you might remember that. And also, by the way, Terry's not here, so I can say whatever I want. I hope he's not watching right now. But actually, I don't know if you really think about this. I've had quite a few pastors in my lifetime. Terry does a really good job on his sermons. Yeah, don't you think? So, next time he's back, I think we all ought to give him a little bit of love. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to, come up with a good message every week. I think Terry does a great job. Yeah? So, salt and light today, the journey as a metaphor for faith. Okay? So now there are all kinds of journeys that are mentioned in the Bible, right? We have Abraham's journey from Ur to Canaan. We got the children of Israel's trek from Egypt to Canaan. We got Paul's missionary travels. And even though the Bible never refers to our faith as a journey, we can pull out some biblical principles that do show us that our walk with God, our faith, can be likened to a journey. So you want to take a trip with me? Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll talk to that guy. So first of all right, a journey focuses on the process of getting us to our destination, not necessarily on the destination itself. Right? The process, not the destination. And so when it comes to our faith as Christians, what ultimately is the end goal? We have faith, we're Christians. What's our end goal? Heaven, okay. Heaven, any other takers? What's the end goal? What's the destination? There we go. All right. Heaven's like the physical destination, but ultimately, really, how do you get there? It's to be like Jesus, right? That's the destination, right? So as we discover who Jesus is, and as we seek to know him, it's our destination, if you will, to be conformed to his image. And it says this in Romans 8:29, which I don't think is on your screen, but Romans 8:29 says, we're supposed to be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, Paul reminds us that we are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord. We're being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory. So, English majors, I won't ask for a show of hands, but English majors, what verb tense is that verse in? 5 million bonus points. What verb tense is that? Almost, not present. Present progressive. Present progressive tense, right? Present progressive tense. Now, present progressive implies what? It's ongoing. Check you out. Right. The action is ongoing. The action hasn't been completed. The end, the destination, hasn't been arrived at yet. Right? You with me? Okay? So our faith, just like Paul is telling us, our faith is a process. We know the destination, we know the end result, we know the place we want to get to is to be like Jesus. But this side of heaven, of course, that's not going to be fully realized. But as long as we're walking with Jesus, we're traveling with him, we're learning from him, then, like a journey, we're making progress toward that destination, aren't we? Yeah? Now, I've been reading through the Gospels lately. Alan mentioned a few months ago that he's been reading through the full Bible cover to cover this year. I've been doing the same. Well, I just got through the Gospels this past week. And I noticed something, even though I've read the Gospels dozens of times, I noticed something. For the first time, after I don't know how many times, for the first time I noticed that Jesus doesn't do a whole lot of sitting. Seriously, you notice this? Jesus does not do a lot of sitting. He's always moving. He's always walking. He's always headed somewhere. And it's interesting, too, that a lot of the time, the gospel writers record important events that happen along the way to his destination. Right? You know, Jesus is going to Samaria. He's going to Jericho. He's going to Caesarea Philippi or something. So we know from the narrative, he's going someplace. But always, along the way, something happens. Somebody waylays him along the way. A synagogue official comes and says, my daughter is like really sick, can you help her out? A Roman centurion sends a couple of guys out and says, my servant is sick, can you help him out? Jesus meets with, or he talks with his disciples, they have chats. They're walking through a crowd, and this woman who's very ill, she reaches through, grabs his cloak, and she's healed instantly. A lot of stuff happens along the way. And so what the gospel writers seem to imply is that Jesus' destination, whether it's Jericho or Samaria or whatever, the destination almost seems to be secondary to what happens on the way. And so it's this along the way aspect of our faith where we learn who Jesus is, how to follow him, who we're supposed to be, and what our place is in his kingdom. We learn that when we mess up or we get off the path, what do? You get back up, keep moving. Right? So when we look at faith as a journey, we're emphasizing progress, not perfection. Right? Progress, not perfection. Right? Awesome. So, that's the first thing, right? Second thing, and kind of related to that first point, is that a journey implies changes, transitions, challenges, adventures. Yeah? Now, those of you who've traveled, you know that things don't always quite go how you planned them. The chuckles tell me you know this. Right? You miss a plane. You make a wrong turn. You eat the wrong thing. You get sick. Sorry, I got to do this. Okay, so... yeah, this wasn't planned. Not here. So, on one of our trips, driving back home from Texas, we were in either Benson or Wilcox, Arizona. Now, you have to remember, I come from a fairly small family, at least in California, but all my Texas relatives, there's a whole passel of them, right? And we would always gather at Christmas, and one of them was always sick, deathly ill, right? So my cousin got me sick this one time, and we left the next day to come back home. I was so sick. Of course, my parents and I were cooped up in a car for 1,000 miles. By the time we got to Arizona, I was in really bad shape. And so were my parents. We spent that night in the hotel room. I shouldn't really describe what was going on. It was bad. It was very bad. Let's just say that. All three of us. Now, you have to remember something. My mom, who's a nurse, she could get through anything, right? My mom was weeping. We're gonna die! This is awful! We're never gonna make it home! It's terrible! Sometimes, they asked her, sometimes things don't go quite the way you expect, right? Sometimes the road is straight as an arrow, there's no traffic, you get to where you need to like that. Sometimes it takes you 5 hours to go 5 miles, right? Sometimes the weather is absolutely perfect. Sometimes you go through a storm that makes it seem like the world's about to end, right? But essentially, journeys are rarely straightforward, right? Journeys are rarely straightforward. And the same thing goes for our faith walk. And our faith walk can also involve loads of changes, challenges, ups and downs, right? Now, it's interesting. We know from reading the scriptures that Jesus has how many followers? Trick question. How many do we know by name? 12 of them, right? 12 guys, disciples, apostles, right? But it's interesting. The Gospels mention, well, Jesus had a lot of followers. We just don't know all their names. And so in Luke 10, Jesus sends out 72 of his followers. And he tells them, okay, go out, spread the gospel, right? Work miracles. Jesus empowers these 72 people to heal the sick. But he also tells them, he just tells them up front, before he sends them out, he tells them, now things might not go quite totally hunky-dory for y'all, right? But it's interesting, the 72, they come back later. We don't know how long. A week, a day, a month, we don't know. But the 72, they come back, and they are stoked. They're thrilled. They say, all right, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. Awesome! We had success! Having faith in you is cool. It's great. We love this. Oh, and you too. Yeah. All right? But another time, a man comes to another of Jesus' followers. It might have been one of these 72. We don't know by name. But this man, this father, he has a son who's possessed by a demon. His son has seizures. He throws himself into the fire. He throws himself into the water. He's in bad shape. And dad is worried. He's upset. Because he cares about his kid, as any good father would. So this father comes to a disciple, and he asks them, okay, I know that you've been empowered to heal, so, help out a little bit here, right? And so you can read about this in Mark 9. Now, Jesus has just come off the Mount of Transfiguration. Okay? This is a high point in his earthly life. And so he comes down, and this father comes to Jesus, and he says, okay, so I asked your disciples to heal my kid, and they couldn't. Right, so what gives? Of course, Jesus gets a little frustrated about this, so you can read about that in Mark 9. But here we have two vastly contrasting episodes in the faith walk of some of Jesus' followers. Right? He's given them the same instructions, the same dose of his power, but we got vastly different results. Which implies that setbacks happen. Yeah? The same guys who cast out demons in one instance just kind of stand around, look at their feet, say, oh, what happened? You know what happened? What happened? They can't do it the second time around. So something must have happened between these two events, right? Maybe this particular disciple was just having a bad day. Maybe he'd spent the previous night sinning it up, and he didn't feel worthy of taking hold of God's power to heal the boy. I don't know what happened. But what we do know is that these disciples didn't just throw up their hands, give up, and walk away from Jesus just because they faced a challenge and had a setback. So if you miss a plane, what do? get on the next one, right? If you fail in something that Jesus tells you to do, you do what he says the next time around. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off. There you go, right? Third, journeys can involve, hate to tell you, journeys can involve the mundane. Journeys can involve the mundane. Yeah, travel can be adventuresome. You know, you try foods you've never tried before. You stumble across a place off the beaten track. You meet really interesting people. Sylvia and I, one time, we were in this tiny little town in Western Ireland, and we were at some place getting some food, and I guess we stuck out like a sore thumb. There's this one guy who had had a little too much. He latched onto us like a leech, right? And he tried to convince us that he was part of the Irish KGB, and just, that doesn't even work. I don't know what that means, right? Interesting people. You meet interesting people. You have adventures, right? But journeys can also be boring, right? Standing in line at the airport waiting for TSA screening. Yeah. All right, pumping gas at a tiny little one-horse town off the freeway. Staring at mile after endless mile of desert or freeway on the way to grandma's house. Okay? So let's be honest, journeys are not always filled with high adventure. Yeah? Now, I've heard it said, and maybe you have too, that the most exciting thing you can possibly do is to become a Christian. Have you heard this? Right? The most exciting thing you can do in your entire life is to become a Christian. Once you do, your life will never be the same. It'll be just one unending adventure after another. You're walking with Jesus all the way to heaven. With big exclamation points. Right? Now, I won't disagree that there is a measure of adventure involved in following Jesus. But if that's what you're expecting day in, day out, you're going to be disappointed. Right? Just like a trip, some kind of trip you're going on, or just like in certain aspects of marriage or taking care of a house or something, the life of faith involves a lot of common, routine, mundane moments, don't they? Yeah? But that's okay. It's all right. I read a story one time about a woman who was talking to her friend, a Christian friend, and she said, "You know what? I'm not really feeling a lot of spiritual vitality. And I don't know why. I'm like in the doldrums. I read my Bible every day, and I listen to worship music. I go to church every week, and I'm just not feeling it. I don't know what's going on. I don't remember the scriptures I read yesterday. What's up with that?" And so her friend asked her, "Okay, so did you eat last month?" Wait, are we having the same conversation here? Right? No, did you eat last month? Of course I ate last month. Yes. So her friend asks, "Okay, well, what did you have for dinner 4 Thursdays ago?" "You don't know what I had for dinner for? What kind of question is that?" "Okay, but you had dinner 4 Thursdays ago, right?" And her friend says, "Yes, of course I did." So her friend says, "Okay, here's the thing. You don't remember what you ate, but you ate something. It nourished you that day, right? And it got you to where you are right now, right?" "Yeah." So her friend says, "Okay, so here's the thing. You read your Bible yesterday. You read it last week. You went to church last week, whatever. Even if you don't remember every single word, even if it isn't stuck in there, you know what? It's moved you along the path closer to Jesus, right? Might have felt mundane, might have just been a routine, might have been just, part of the steps, but whatever. It nourished you. But take it for what it is. Just like every meal you have, right? So the mundane, it helps us get to where we're going, right? And it shouldn't be downplayed. It shouldn't be downplayed as unimportant. Right? You with me? The fourth, and I like this one. This one's cool. Right? Many human journeys involve travel companions. Right? Travel companions. So, back to the story of Jesus sending out the 72 of his followers. It's interesting to note that Jesus knew the spiritual value of having a companion on our journey of faith. Because he sent these people out, you guessed it, in pairs. Yeah, he sent these 72 guys out in pairs. Now, I haven't done a whole lot of traveling on my own, but I've found that when I'm able to share my experiences with somebody else, it makes the trip a whole lot more interesting, right? Both in the moment, but also afterward, right? Sylvia and I, we still talk about trips we've been on years and years ago, and I wouldn't be able to do that unless we had shared that experience. We talk about finding a little cafe and the interesting meal we had there, meeting this crazy drunk guy in Ireland. You can't do that by yourself. So sometimes we have travel companions for an entire trip. Sometimes you meet up with friends for just a part of a vacation. And sometimes travel can be really tough on our own, but it's much easier with a companion. They can hold the door open while you're juggling baggage. Let's say you're not familiar with the local language. They can read the street signs for you. It's easier if one is driving, the other's navigating, right? Now, granted, you're probably thinking, oh, but. Granted, having a companion on a trip can involve conflict, right? But having a companion enhances the experience. It enhances the experience. So, think about the companions you've had on your faith journey, right? Think about the companions you've had. They could be pastors you've had. If you went to church school, maybe your Bible teacher, maybe your spouse, maybe friends at work. Who has walked the road of faith with you and encouraged you? Think about it, right? Who's taught you? Who have you shared the scenery with? I can think of several people without whom I wouldn't be here right now, right? I think about my parents, who took me to church every week. They sent me to church school all the way up through high school, right? They laid the foundation for where I am with God right now. I think about the pastors I've had, particularly Tom and Terry, who have filled me with a knowledge of who God is, who Jesus is, which was in some ways very different from the ways I've been taught as a child. I've got a Catholic friend at work, and we've had a lot of conversations about faith, and telling him about my notion, my faith, is different from his, and so it's helped me articulate my own faith in contrast to his. So all of these people, they've walked alongside me, they've guided me, they've encouraged me, they've challenged me, and my journey has been all the better for it. Right? We need companions on our travels, don't we? Yeah? Good. And finally, when we travel, we have to do something, right? Veteran travelers, you know this. When we travel, we got to lighten our load, right? Now, I've probably told this story before, but it bears repeating. I have an unremitting fear of being stranded somewhere without having something to read. I'm absolutely terrified of this. It's probably to the point of a phobia. I probably need to go to CR on Friday nights. I mean, I've thought about this, okay? First time I should? Okay, all right. Maybe I will. So the first time that Sylvia took me to Puerto Rico to meet her family, we were going to be gone for a week, 7 days. I took 12 books. 12. Now, even in the best of circumstances, there's no way I could read 12 books in 7 days, right? Much less being with family, being in an exotic location. I can't do it, so I'm just crazy. I know this, right? But in the 14 years since then, I've learned I don't need that many books. Okay, I dropped it down to about 2, maybe 3, right? But I've learned to lighten my load on our travels, right? When you travel, you begin to realize you need to learn to pack smart or to travel light. Right? You probably don't need 10 changes of outfits. You probably don't need 6 pairs of shoes or 3 hats or, yes, 12 books. So in many ways, simplicity, taking along only what's necessary, is key to having a good trip. Right? Simplicity is also a very helpful practice when walking with Jesus through life. And so this could be in regard to material things, right? Do we really need as much stuff as we have? Or it can refer to something else that we're holding on to, like attitudes. How many of us need to let go of our anger, our bitterness, our complaining? How many of us need to let go of, or to stop being critical or judgmental of other people? The more that we hold on to un-Christ-like attitudes, the more they're going to weigh us down, and the less we're going to be able to continue our journey of faith. Right? We got to let it go. We got to let go of the selfishness, the pride, the sin, whatever it is that's holding us back from being like Jesus. Right? This is something that's really hard for me. It really is. I debated whether I was going to mention this. It's not in my script here, but I'm going to say it anyway, because, Pastor Tom taught me to be honest and open, right? And I love Tom for that. So one thing that I've got to shed, I've got to get rid of, is this very unforgiving attitude towards somebody. There's this one guy who did me wrong 3 years ago, right? And I hate to say it, I hate to use this word, but, let's be honest, I hate him. I really do. No, and I don't mean like, no, I mean, I really truly do. Every time I think of this guy or see him, I tense up, right? But this is complicated for me to forgive this guy for a couple reasons. Because first of all, he doesn't think he did anything wrong to me, right? So how do you forgive someone who thinks he doesn't need forgiving? How does that work, right? And second, I like being angry. Okay? Those of you who've been through this, you know what I'm talking about. It gives you motivation, doesn't it? It gives you something to hang, like, that's mine. Seriously, that's mine. But you know what? I know, because when I feel that bile rise up in me, I know Jesus would not want me to have that attitude toward this guy. That's not Christ-like. It's been really hard. I've been struggling with this for 3 years, right? But I got to get rid of it. If I'm going to make progress on my journey, I got to learn how to just let that go. It's hard. It's really hard. And Paul puts it this way in Philippians 3. Paul's talking about his own journey of faith. He says this: what's my goal? What am I going to do? What am I after? I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. I want to suffer with him, sharing in his faith, so that one way or another I will experience the resurrection from the dead. Now, I don't mean to say that I've already achieved these things, or I've already reached perfection, but I press on to possess that perfection for which Christ Jesus first possessed me. Now, dear brothers and sisters, I've not achieved it, but I focus on this one thing. One thing. Forgetting the past, looking forward to what lies ahead, I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. Man, I want to do that. I want to be there. Simplicity. I focus on this one thing. This one thing. There might be gazillions of important things. I focus on this one thing, this essential. Right? Sorry, just this last Sunday, I watched a movie called Labyrinth. Anybody see that? Yeah, okay, Labyrinth. Now, I've been meaning to watch this movie for years. It's older. It's from the mid-'80s. But I kept putting it off. I don't know. I watched it. Oh, my word, it's so good. But there's this one scene. Now, basic story. This teenage girl, I know this is going to sound cheeseball in church, right? This teenage girl, her little baby brother has been kidnapped by a bunch of goblins. Okay? They've kidnapped her brother, taken her brother into this goblin kingdom, and she has to get through this labyrinth to rescue him. Right? So there's this one scene, though, where the teenage girl, she's tired, she wants to go home, doesn't want to deal with this quest anymore, and she's in this like giant garbage dump, right? And this little woman, little goblin thing, she takes the teenage girl back to her room. You're home, check it out. And the girl, oh, I'm so happy, I'm home, this is great. And then the little woman, she starts saying, hey, here's your teddy bear. You love your teddy bear. Oh, I love my teddy bear. Here are your drawing pencils. You're a great artist. Oh, yeah. And so she starts piling this girl with things that represent her. And this girl, she starts getting weighed down by really important things. Again, things that identify her. Nothing bad about her teddy bear or books or any of this. But at one point, the girl suddenly realizes, wait, I'm stuck here. This stuff is really important, but you know what? It's not essential. What's essential is that I go rescue my little brother, and she throws all this other stuff off, and she makes it to find her little brother. Simplicity. Focus on one thing. One thing. Right? Forget the past. You leave aside the junk that's held you back. You drop your burdens. You step forward. You gotta lighten your load if you're gonna move ahead. Right? You with me on this? Did you agree that a journey is a good metaphor for faith? Iffy, maybe by now. All right. So here's the thing. It's easy to nod and smile and say, okay, it's 12:22. I'm hungry. I'm ready for lunch. Yeah, sure, I can see journey's a process, people are important, yeah, that's cool. And then you go home and you forget about all this, right? It's easy to do, we've all done it. But I want to challenge you to something today, right? I want to challenge you. 3 weeks ago, our kids got up here and they shared what they had done in Vacation Bible School, right? And it was really cool. I mean, the cave backdrop and the kids were singing their songs and the videos. Really cool stuff. Is Rowena here? Where's Rowena? Okay. Whoever set up the whole Vacation Bible School did an awesome job, right? An amazing job with our church's kids. And so I sat over here watching this and listening to the kids sing their songs, and it was cute. It was sweet. It was really nice. But it made me stop and think. I wonder if our kids here at North Hills, from the really young ones all the way to the older ones, I wonder if they really know what they're singing about. Or if they're just singing words because they're told to. Right? Do they really understand what they're singing? And then, of course, I thought about myself at their age, when I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't think I knew what all this Christianity stuff was all about. Right? I mean, how can you when you're that age? But then that's part of the journey, right? You start somewhere, you end up somewhere else, you hope. So I did something 3 weeks ago, after I got home from church. I did something that I had been meaning to do for years and years. 3 weeks ago, I started writing my spiritual autobiography. Okay? Now, that's just a really fancy-schmancy way of saying my faith journey, okay? But after watching the kids up here, I went home, I ate lunch, I sat down at my computer, and I started writing, okay? And in about 4 hours, I wrote 17 pages, single-spaced. Thank you. 17 pages. The next week, I wrote 7 more. Last week, I think I wrote 5 or 6. And I've gone back and I've thought about all the churches that I've attended, all the pastors I've had, what I was taught as a child, the evolution of my faith and how I lost it when I was in college. I chronicled my conversion and what that felt like. And I've written down what I believe right now. So if you were to ask me right now, so Brian, what's your theology? What do you believe? Do you believe in the virgin birth? With the substitutionary atonement, blah, 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 right? What do you believe? I could tell you, because it's there. I've written it. I'm not done with it yet. It's still got a little bit more that I think I want to get through. But so far, I've written about 30 pages, right? But here's my challenge to you today. or your summer homework assignment, because it is still summer, and I am a teacher, I got to do this, right? Okay, not homework, it's a challenge then. So here's what I'd like you to do, right? I want you to think about where you are spiritually right now, today. Right? How did you get here? What do you believe? Why do you believe? Is it just because you were raised in the church, you just, no real alternative? Do you believe because mom and dad told you? Do you believe just because it's something you're supposed to do? What? Why do you believe? And if you have kids, those of you who have kids, what are you teaching them? And if somebody were to ask you your story, the story of your journey of faith, what would you tell them? And you have no idea how interesting an exercise this has been for me to do this, right? To sit down and think about my own journey. I've remembered things that I had forgotten from decades ago. Just little details that only now I've realized, oh, that's why I believe this. It's been a very clarifying experience for me, right? To be able to put down in words, this is what I believe, right? See, it's way too simple. Because, I started off my writing just saying, I am a Christian, which many of you might do, right? I am a Christian. But then I had to stop and think, well, what does that mean? Right? But by clarifying, by saying, this is where I've been, this is what I believe, I'm able to put flesh on those couple of words, I am a Christian, right? Well, unless you can articulate your faith, a whole lot of it's just going to be really hazy, really vague, right? Where are you in your journey today, right now? Well, I want you, again, I'm challenging you, I want you take some time to write down your journey of faith, okay? Your own spiritual autobiography. Now, it doesn't have to be literature, it doesn't have to be Shakespeare, it doesn't have to be 30 pages. Okay? I'm Irish, we use a lot of words. You don't have to, okay? But I want you to really think about and articulate what you believe, what has gotten you to this point in your spiritual journey. You might be surprised, like I've been, you might be surprised what you learn. Okay? Will you do that with me? Okay, all right. I'll ask some of you in a few weeks. See where you are. Okay? So, ultimately, Jesus journeyed from heaven to earth to live and die for us. Right? He was raised from the dead. He journeyed back to heaven where he's waiting for us to join him, like John said. Right? But in the meantime, Jesus asks, he commands us to follow him, to journey with him everything that we do in our time on this earth. So Jesus works in us through his Holy Spirit so we can grow into his image on the journey and so we can reach journey's end. So who's going to take a trip with me? Awesome. Thank you, church.